I think probably the most important factor developers should be considering when evaluating new market opportunities is the quality of the partner. For example, when entering a new market under a hotel management agreement, we are very much reliant on the local partner in terms of firstly delivering the project and then also our ability to operate under that specific regulatory framework. Always be considering how do you improve the convertibility of an opportunity, and having the right partner is integral to this. I think another important factor is local know-how. Each country within the region is different, and there's specific know-how in terms of firstly how do we operate and deliver value to our owners, and what levers we need to pull and activate to do that. And then secondly, how do we actually operate from a regulatory point of view in each market. And this can be as simple as obtaining work permits, maintaining work permits. How do we make payments outside of a country? How do we get fees outside of a country? How do we provide services into a country? And if I look at Nigeria as an example, Accor's had a long history in Nigeria, and I think it really is only recently that we've really understood how to operate in that market and how to mitigate some of the challenges, specifically around forex availability and getting fees paid, paying suppliers, and paying for services that we provide in the country. And I think, as someone or an operator looking at Nigeria that doesn't have a presence there, I think there are an enormous amount of challenges that would potentially prevent you pursuing an opportunity there. So I think it really is around understanding what those challenges are, understanding how you mitigate them, and I think that builds an ability to operate in those regions. I think lastly, and probably equally as important as the partner, is the project viability and fundamentals. I find it amazing that in markets and cities we understand we will compare two opportunities that potentially are only a few hundred meters apart from each other and come to a conclusion that one's a phenomenal project and the other one's potentially not so much. Yet we will go into different regions without that same granular understanding and ability to really assess the viabilities and fundamentals around the project. So I think overall, I think you need to pick the correct partner. You need to understand how to operate and how to mitigate challenges in that market, and you need to be 100% sure around the viability and fundamentals of the project. Local capacity and know-how is incredibly important. Many services can be provided remotely, but I really believe that you need a local presence and understanding that can really help inform the way we design our products and brands, the way we define our services, and the way we develop our commercial strategies for our hotels. I think another key factor is scale and clustering. Generally, if I look at the Accor portfolio, we tend to perform better in markets where we have a number of properties. This is simply because we can have more resources and capability in a market where we have a larger presence. It also allows us to cluster services and functions between hotels, which really does allow us to drive efficiencies and gives us a competitive edge over our competitors that maybe don't have the same presence in those markets. I think lastly, very important to make sure that you're always aligning your strategy to the specific maturity of the market and norms within that market. And probably the best example I can give is the luxury safari industry in South Africa, same as Tanzania, same as Kenya. This industry is heavily tour operator dependent, and it's probably not going to change in the foreseeable future. And I think if one was to enter these markets with the thinking that one can simply translate the distribution and strategies that work for an operator in, for example, North America or Europe, I think you would be in for a bit of a surprise. So I think really having that local know-how, those local relationships, understanding of the way things work is incredibly important in terms of making sure that strategies are aligned to the specific markets and make sense. I think probably the greatest challenge is around project execution. Within Africa, we have a major problem in terms of the percentage of projects that either stall or fail during the delivery phase. And generally, this is down to partners not necessarily understanding hotels as an asset class and not understanding that the time frame from conceiving a hotel to delivering a hotel and ramping it up to an operational level that can support a certain debt structure is anywhere between 5 and 7 years. So yeah, I think in terms of any support that can be done to mitigate that risk and make sure partners go into hotel development projects really understanding the challenges and how to deliver them are really important, because again, if projects are delivered late, it places pressure on owners in terms of how they finance the projects, and it places pressure on operators because you're entering the market a number of years after you anticipated it, potentially with an asset that is now no longer aligned to what is relevant and best of class in that market, which really can be challenging. I think another challenge is obviously constraints in the local market. I think when entering a market, understand the regulatory framework, understand how you get your fees out, how you get your services into a country long before you make the decision to enter that market. And then lastly, I think you've always got to be considering operational efficiencies. When you're entering a new market, you're always going to be less efficient than when you're adding another hotel into a market where you're already present. And as an example, I mean, if you enter a relatively mature market like Nairobi, for example, it's going to be incredibly difficult to operate at the same level of efficiency as an operator that's got multiple properties in that region. So I think you've always just got to find that balance between what kind of market you're entering in terms of how competitive it is, and how you can try and be as efficient as possible. I think that the best examples I can give are Fairmont re-entering the South African market with the Cape Grace in Cape Town, which will be launched under the Fairmont brand later this year. And then Mantis entering Zimbabwe in Victoria Falls. I think the reasons for these success stories are fairly simple. The fundamentals were solid. Great cities in Cape Town and Victoria Falls with really strong fundamentals and viability behind the project. Really strong partners in terms of the owners of both hotels, and in markets where we understand them well and we have neighbouring operational expertise that can support these openings and support these operations. In terms of opportunities, I would really be looking at three things. I would be looking at cities as opposed to looking at regions and countries. I would be looking at the depth of the hospitality sector in those cities, and I would back the demographics of Africa. I think at a time where we're seeing declining population and pressures on GDP growth around the world, I think Africa is well placed to grow sustainably for a long time into the future. We may not see exponential growth like you see, for example, in parts of the Middle East, but I genuinely believe you're going to see sustained growth for many decades in the future in terms of the hospitality sector. When I say cities versus regions, Africa is a very vast region. If you look at the top cities purely by population, Nigeria, DRC, Ghana, Morocco, Kenya, South Africa, all have multiple cities in that top city list. As an example, Nigeria has 7 top cities by population in the top 50 within Africa, which is amazing. So yeah, I think that's a really important factor, to focus on cities and then to assess the depth of the hospitality market in each of those cities. I think we've seen across the region where you can open hotels and operate them in markets with strong demographics and strong demand, but not necessarily a lot of competition, you can do incredibly well. And I think that really is around finding the balance and looking for opportunities in places where potentially there is less competition and the ability to enter a market early and really outperform.